Hello, AfterBuzzers and divorce show fans. We have a very special interview today with Thomas Haden Church, aka Robert, so stay tuned. He's got a lot to say.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome to our very special extra interview with Thomas Haden Church. I'm your host, Oriana Leo. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Oriana Leo. And joining me on the panel this evening,
Constance Dunn is here. I'm so excited. We're going to be joining with Thomas Haden Church. Constance Dunn, join me at Instagram at Constance Dunn, Twitter, Constance Dunn.
Awesome. Thomas, are you there? Hello.
Happy to be on the phone and ready to answer questions.
Okay. So this episode is just so fantastic for you and your performance. We're really enjoying it. But, you know, we know you from Jack and Sideways, probably the most award-winningest project you've been involved in. And I have to say personally, Thomas, that Wings, that was one of my favorite shows growing up.
As a turnkey child.
Yes, exactly.
As a latchkey child. Now, I get those comments now, you know, from like 30-somethings, and, you know, and it's like, yeah, I would come home from school and it would be in reruns, and I would just watch it, which is, I guess, kind of awesome, but it's also, you know, each time somebody mentions it, and I know that they're way too young to have really appreciated it when it was on. Yeah, they're all just like mile markers in the day.
Well, yeah. So these are sad stories, but you know what? Your character was there to cheer us up. Now we know you got your start in voice rather than on camera acting. Can you tell us how you got started and what making that transition was like?
I started working on radio when I was in high school, and then I picked it up again whenever I was in college, and then that sort of led me into the world of voiceover even while I was still in college. I had a college instructor who was a pretty well-known voiceover guy nationally, but had a great agent and had a really good solid business for himself out of the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And one day he commented to me, he said, you know, my nickname for you is Thunder Whisperer, because every time you're hitting on a girl in my class, I can hear you. And so he recommended that I go meet with his agent, which I did. And they helped me put together a demo, but I alternate to that. I would also had a lot of friends that were in advertising, and I would sit in with different creative groups in Dallas and Austin, and you know, people would be like, well, listen, man, when we do the pitch, you know, maybe you could just do the voiceover, and I would do it, and then I started getting jobs like that too.
Interesting.
I originally moved to LA, which was in 1989, just to get into, like, you know, the big leagues as far as voiceover. But right before I left Dallas, I was cast. A buddy of mine went to audition for a movie, and all I did was give him a ride. and I was sitting there waiting, and this guy just came up to me and started talking to me. And I don't know, I made him laugh or, you know, whatever. And he goes, well, so are you in audition? And I said, no, I'm just here with my buddy. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm the director of the movie.
Oh.
And so he goes, why don't you audition, you know, when your friend's done? And then getting the movie, getting a lead role, because it was a very small independent. I don't even know if it was ever released. But so I did that right before I moved to LA. And then, you know, they were my agent. I got an agent in LA pretty quick. They were able to get some footage, and they would just send it out to casting people. And I guess I got, this is a very long answer. Sorry. That was a very
no, it's okay.
Question. Right. About 6 months after I moved to LA, one of the casting people that really responded to the footage was a casting director for Cheers. And so I went and I ended up doing an episode of Cheers. And while we were doing that episode, Wings was actually being cast. And this is all at Paramount Pictures, Paramount Television. And the director, legendary TV director James Burrows, was directing me in Cheers, and he got a hold of the producers from Wings and said, "You guys should come check this guy out." And that's how I ended up on Wings.
Wow.
For 6 seasons. And then, you know, once you're on a gig, once you have a TV, because I remember my first couple of years in LA, I was really interested in trying to do stand-up. And I would go, and, you know, I had stand-up comedian friends. And they're like, "Man, why, you know, you're kind of, we're all doing stand-up to get sitcoms. You've already got a sitcom." So I guess initially I sort of did it backwards, but I think it was the preferential way to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's how I transitioned. I mean, I still do some voiceover stuff, not as much as I used to, but every now and then, like, was it last year? It was either that last year. It was sort of like from the spring of 14 to the spring of 15, I did Miller Lite for a year. Yeah,
Awesome.
I just, every now and then something comes up.
So it's safe to say that you really slid into this profession. You were not pounding the pavement. You were not starving and eating ramen noodles and going on huge casting calls.
There was some of that, but it just didn't go on as long. Like, I was listening to an interview with Dax Shepard, and, you know, he was talking about it took him 10 years before he got punked with Ashton Kutcher. No, I definitely did not take that road. And you know, clearly, but I mean, I did so many other things, and you know, I mean, and I have done so many other types of jobs and worked on ranches when I was a kid, and, you know, all of, like, on, you know, Wikipedia is like all the ridiculous part-time jobs that I had as a kid, but even in my 20s. And, you know, I just did a lot of different stuff that I kind of crammed it. Like, I dropped out of high school and I worked in the oil field.
Wow.
And I went back to high school and finished, and then, you know, went on to college. But I just have done a lot of different things. And so by the time I got to LA, I was 28.
Which helps, right? I think that really helps in some cases.
You know, I mean, it was, sometimes it was a little disheartening because, you know, as you're saying, yes, I did that first. And even after I got Wings, I still had to audition for everything. And in fact, the last audition that I had was for Sideways.
Oh, wow.
But, which was in 2003 that we shot it. But from when I moved to LA in 89 to Sideways, I mean, I had to audition for, well, not for everything, but for, you know, I didn't have to audition for Ned and Stacy. I mean, they just offered that to me, which is the show I did after Wings at Fox. Like, no, I definitely did my share of pavement pounding, because even though I was on a comedy, no, I had nothing else.
Right.
And I didn't even get anything else until my first, like, real movie was Tombstone, and that was in 93.
Mm-hmm. I see. So you have been perhaps very selective about projects. I mean, speaking of HBO Divorce, when you were first approached with this project, was it an instant yes, or was it a slow burn? Did you have to ponder and think about it and do some data gathering? What was it like for you when you were first approached with this opportunity?
It was all Sarah Jessica Parker. She and I did a movie called Smart People together, and we just really hit it off. Mm-hmm. And especially when the movie came out, we went to Sundance with it. We went to Tribeca. We had the premiere in New York. And this was, you know, it was only a few years after Sex and the City had gone off the air. So, you know, she's the darling of New York. Mm-hmm. And that premiere, even though the movie was not successful, that premiere was an absolute who's who in New York. And Sarah Jessica introduced me to a lot of really, like, legendary individuals. She just pulled me around the party and introduced me to Jane Fonda, and I remember specifically Jane Fonda, but there were so many other people that she knew. and we just hit it off. And so at the beginning of last year, she sent me the script and wrote me a little note just saying, please read this, and please let's talk before you say no. Because she knew that I said no to a lot of television.
Right.
And she had heard that, which I did. You know, when the 90s were over, I really wanted to put TV behind me for the rest of my business life. And, you know, I had a deal at Disney for a couple of years, and that ended. And so I really didn't even consider a project for whatever, 16 years.
Wow.
I guess it was.
Well, there's some very filmic components to this show. The look of it is somewhat filmic, and also the tone. And we always talk on the after show, we always talk about the line that you walk so well in HBO Divorce as a performer, and that's inhabiting a kind of comedic aspect within what is a dramatic show as far as a tent or a category. Now, is this hard for you? Is this easy? Do you always have to kind of like jigger things in your mind and calibrate things before you shoot, or is it just very natural?
You know, that's a great question, and it's a multi-layered question. I don't ever really separate in my performance with any character, unless it's just supposed to be just nonstop funny, and then you don't really have to consider. You know, I did a small part in a movie that came out at the end of last year, Daddy's Home, which is just, and you know, it's a freight train of just funny. And so when I did that, you don't have to think about anything else other than it is awesome to be in this scene with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg or both. And I just want to deliver as a professional. I want to be up to these guys' caliber. And I do, honestly, and I think the movie was funny, and I think I was funny in it. So I did my job. But when there are, as like in last night's episode and pretty much every episode, Sarah Jessica and I always wanted it, and Sharon Horgan and Paul Sims, the showrunners, and presumably HBO, we all wanted it to be that fine line of dramatic comedic, and the fact that the subject matter can be as traumatizing as it is, and it's terrible emotional upheaval, you know, you still have to try to find some of the lighter kind of absurd moments, but we never set out for this to be nonstop, like entertaining, is what I've said in talking to some other people. I wanted it to be compelling, but there's definitely going to be moments where it's almost like too intimate or too ugly, and you kind of want to look like just like I shouldn't even be watching this.
Right, like a car accident or something like that.
We just wanted it to be completely as authentic a human experience as it can be, given that we're filming a television show.
Absolutely.
About these people. But you know, I lay the sword at the feet of HBO, which is premier television, premier entertainment, period. And Sharon Horgan and Paul Sims, you know, Sharon, who brings such an amazing sort of understanding, you know, being that she's Irish, and her interpretation of how an American couple would go through this. And then Paul Sims is, you know, he's a legendary television producer. I mean, the guy's just, you know, Girls and Boardwalk Empire, and I knew him at NBC in the 90s because they did news radio. He created news radio.
Oh, great show.
Yeah, he's just a great guy and a very smart writer, and then we just have so many other great people. Molly Shannon, who's terrific, and, you know. But I think everybody. I mean, I think Molly's amazing in the show because she's known for such, you know, just over the top comedic characters, and I think Molly's doing some of the most subtle, dramatic, compelling, character work on the show.
As the episodes progress, for sure, we're seeing a lot of new information is being introduced on every episode, where we're getting just a little bit more information about her, about Dallas, about all of these characters. I wanted to ask you, do you relate to Robert at all, or what do you draw on? Who, maybe you have friends that have been through this, or just the kind of ridiculousness. What do you draw from of what he's going through and what's in his mind?
I mean, it's funny because right before I called you guys, there was a New York Post feature that came out today. I did the interview last week, and the writer was, he kind of asked me a similar question. And yeah, I mean, by the time you get into your 50s, I would say most of my friends, hey, sometimes it's a misfortune and sometimes it's the best thing.
Right.
That people recognize we're going to be more healthy and happy moving apart.
Right.
And so, it still is a bit stigmatized. My generation, the divorce is still like, well, something failed.
Right.
And that's not, I don't, that with younger generations, I don't think that that's really the stigma anymore. That sometimes relationships, they just end. They end because of destiny. Like, I mean, I have a lot of friends, and my let's see, 2 of my sisters have been through divorce, and my mother went through divorce, and I've never been married, but I mean, I have children with an ex, and that was every bit as much of an upheaval if as anybody that's gone through a divorce. And so I would say that I just draw upon my observations and how I think it's all, how it all can kind of be filtered through Robert, because ultimately with all my characters that I've been fortunate enough to play, it's always, I just, by the time I'm in front of the camera, you asked if, there is a measure of calibration. That the calibration is just fitting myself into that guy's life.
Right.
I see.
And the life of that guy's mind.
And that
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Finish your thought, please.
Yeah, no, that was it. I said I just try to live in his reality. And so for me, the comedy comes out of just the most ridiculous, absurd moment.
Right.
You're right.
Like we're never, and it's sort of everybody's mantra, nothing is set up. There's not scenes and sequences like in situation comedy that I did in the 90s, but I think it's true today. I don't watch very much comedy television, but that you the whole, you have a whole scene that sets up a button, or it sets up, some big, ha-ha moment,
right?
Or you have them in the cadence of the dialogue, or how one character is talking, down or whatever to another character, or how it's exchange of funny gunfire between characters. We never, that was never a pursuit of anybody involved in the show. It was always going to be, if something is funny, it's going to be funny because it's ridiculous.
Right.
The
Yes.
situation is ridiculous.
And that reflects what happens in these situations. And speaking of, I think one of the rewards for viewers is that you are portraying a man who is not portrayed very often in mainstream entertainment, and that is a man whose life is essentially nuked. This is a guy who has been a family man. He has been married. He has occupied certain roles in society for decades, and now that's all changed. And we don't see men portrayed, who many men have gone through this, are going through it. And I think that that is, one of the big rewards of the show. But I have to find out, what is the reward for the show for you? What are some of the top rewards that maybe perhaps were even unexpected when you took on this role?
And you guys are really good question askers.
I'm going to put that on my resume.
Same here.
Every question has a subset of questions.
Right.
That's fine. The rewards are, you asked me in one of the previous subset questions, you asked, you know, what you know, what's the preparation in walking that fine line, and that's the reward, the challenge of making dramatic moments believable when they're juxtapositioned or juxtaposed against something funny. You know, to me, divorce, and I reference him because I worked with him, and I do regard it as one of my greatest achievements as a performer. To me, it's very Alexander Payne-esque. Or Paynesian.
In the Payne's thread, in the Payne's vein.
What did Alexander's storytelling, not just Alexander, Jim Taylor, his partner, you know, between obviously Sideways, but even, you know, About Schmidt and Election, and then, you know, Descendants and Nebraska. And, you know, Alexander, his storytelling is just that, where you can have a painfully awkward moment informed by a painfully comedic or dramatic moment.
Right.
And knowing Alexander, it's totally what he feeds off of as a filmmaker. That he wants to put the audience in very uncomfortable situations that can be alternately very familiar.
Right.
And I think that Divorce, we do that too. And again, you know, that blue ribbon goes to Sharon Horgan and Paul and Sarah Jessica, you know, our executives, Casey Bloys and Amy Grabovich. You know, they're the ones that put it all together before it was sent to me. And then I had a lot of ideas and notes, not just about Robert, but about how the stories were going to be told. And I am pretty involved, you know, from the ground up and in a lot of the script work. I mean, I haven't done any hands-on writing, but I give, and they all can attest to this with the grimace. I give a lot of notes, and I have a lot of ideas.
And is that a challenge for you, is to really give that feedback and to see where it goes?
No, I mean, I'm just you know, a waterfall of it, and they choose, you know, which bucketful they're going to take and which they're going to leave. I mean, you know, I enjoy being collaborative, and everybody else does too.
So Thomas,
that's a very rewarding situation to be in, because I can tell you, you know, when on Wings, I was so inexperienced, and this is going back, you know, 20 plus years. I was so inexperienced, and I still had a lot of ideas, but I didn't know how to be politic in presenting them.
Right.
And then my next experience was on Ned and Stacy, which was 2 years, and I did have a producing or consulting credit or whatever on that, because the next situation I was going to be in, I made sure in advance they knew that the collaboration was a necessity. And I did the same thing, you know, with Paul and Sharon and Sarah Jessica. I said, look, this is the only way that I can do it. And they're like, bring it. Absolutely.
That is awesome.
Welcome that, you know, bring everything that you have. And that's the only way that it works for me. And look, I'm not always right. And I am glad to abandon something if somebody has a better idea,
right,
or an idea that is more authentic to whatever's happening emotionally.
Amazing feedback, Thomas. We are actually out of time. We have to save some time for the rest of the recap for our show, but it has been an absolute pleasure. I know we could do this all day. If you want to call in for another episode, we will absolutely take it.
Yes, it's very interesting. I feel like we could ask you like 50
we could go on and on. But everyone, can you tell us where you are on social media? Because I know you're not on Twitter. Is there anywhere that the people can find you?
Nowhere.
Okay.
Nowhere.
So you were
smart man.
No social media presence at all, and I get a lot of pushback on that. They you know, Sarah Jessica is on Instagram a lot and Twitter a lot, and she's kind of politely mentioned it to me. Others have been a little bit more sort of emphatic that I should be on social media, but You know, I don't have any
Listen,
presence in art.
we're not creating any value judgments here. If you don't want to be on social media, that is just fine. But thank you so much for your time, for phoning in. We absolutely love your performance on Divorce. And again, if you want to come for another episode, we'd love to have you. But we are out of time.
Sweet. I'm sure you're both lovely in person. So thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay.
Congratulations on your
Yes,
good fortune
congratulations.
in this
Thank
tough
business.
tough business,
Yeah.
and you've had a really good time, and you've done it your way, and I think that's very inspiring to a lot of people. Thanks.
Oh, that's very gracious. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
All right.
Thomas.
Good
Bye.
luck.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
That was Thomas Haden Church, who plays Robert on Divorce. And that's all the time we have. Big thanks to Thomas Haden Church for spending time with us. I'm your host, Oriana Leo. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Oriana Leo, Instagram at Oriana Leo, and check out my business, tiltbyoriana.com. And I've been joined by the lovely Constance Dunn. Where can the people find you?
Oh, Instagram, Constance Dunn. Twitter, Constance Dunn.
And we know we can't find Thomas Haden Church on social media, but if you want to tweet us, we will certainly get the message across. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.